Well, good morning and a beautiful Sunday morning it is to all of you. Pray that you're having a great week, and thank you so much for tuning in to this little study. Pray that God will touch your heart through it as every time I go to study, there's wonderful things that just stand out, and I pray that it does for you today. So, as we're looking at 1 Samuel chapter 23, verse 14 on your screen, remembering that David is running from Saul, but remember, he's not alone. He's got people with him, and that's where it's a little hard to discern how many times is he in his group of 600 men, how many times is he somewhat by himself, and the others have scattered, and when do they reconvene? So as we pick up in verse 14, Vayeshev David Bamidbar Bamsadot, and then Vayeshev Bachar Bamidbar Ziph. So he's in the wilderness of Ziph. He's hiding in caves. They call it the strongholds. And so it says that Saul was looking for him. Um, Kol Hayamim, all every day. Again, for those of you who are studying Hebrew, this is a Kamas Hatuf underneath the Kaf, which gives it the O sound. It's one of the more common ones. Many of them are somewhat challenging to understand, but whenever you have I believe the true rule is when you have a whole letter vowel in a unaccented consonant, it's a common set too. So coal is one of the ones, so it's not pronounced cal, even though the Bible Hub shows it that way. It really isn't correct. It should be kol hayamim. So Shaul kol hayamim velo netano Elohim bayado. So God did not deliver David into his hand. And this is what kind of jumped out at me. First, why was it necessary to say that God did not deliver David into his hands? Why does it not just say that Saul never caught David or Saul could not catch David? So this is just very interesting. You would think it would say, but God protected David every day and kept him from getting caught. So I find the verbiage very interesting. I did not find any commentary that even said anything about it. But what we do notice is that the word for God here, translated as God, is Elohim. It is not Yahweh. Remember that Yahweh has the meaning of the more merciful, compassionate side of God. Elohim is the more um, taking the judgment, taking the uh, protection uh, in a stronger handed way. So it's interesting here, just the verbiage. Why would God ever want to deliver David into Saul's hand? David was God's chosen, his anointed. So this is just very interesting how this was written. Um, I don't understand all of it, but it does talk about some things that are just very interesting. The word uh, Netano is from the word Natan, which is where the Jonathan's name came from. Yonatan is how Jonathan's name is pronounced in Hebrew. It's, God has given. And so I think it's kind of interesting that this is written, and maybe there's a play on the words here. Hebrew has a lot of poeticism, a lot of word plays, and so maybe this is the point here of saying, Netano, God below Netano, God did not deliver. But then in the next verse, we see Yonatan coming out, which is God is providing, God is giving. And so this is just a very fun point of poetry and sentence structure, which again, the English doesn't come out so clear to bring out. So as we move on, Vayahar David ki yasa Shaul um, levakesh et nafsho, that Saul had always come to seek the life of David. Again, another interesting word is the word for life is nephesh. We see it here spelled with a noon Pei, Shin, and Vav, and but it's Nafsho, meaning his life. So it's in the third masculine singular, identifying it's David's life. And so n- I think that's kind of interesting that they look at him as the word is for soul. I knew people years back that spoke in maybe an older form of language style, and they would call people bodies and call people souls. Um, that is very similar here to what David is being described about David, that Saul was seeking after his soul. Um, and then as we go on to finish the verse, David Bamidbar Zif Bacho Rasha. Bahoresha. So it's the name of Ziph of Horish is how it's transcribed. Then we get into Jonathan coming to meet him via Yonatan ben Shaul Vayelech. So Jonathan came. Um, he's the son of Saul. And why was it necessary to say that? Um, just maybe to tie these two verses together that, Saul is seeking the soul of David, and God did not give him into his hand, but protected him. And here, a person with a similar name is being given, but yet Saul birthed him. He was his son. He's part of his issue. He's part of his DNA. And here are two people who are just polar opposites in where they are in their relationship with God and their relationship with David. Again, a lot of irony, a lot of word plays here being brought out. And then so what did Jonathan do? And this is where we're going to just stop at verse 17 because there's another very interesting phrase in here. It says that El David Horashah into the woods. Um, but then this word is um, Vaychazech et Yado Be'Elohim. And Jonathan, it says, strengthened David's hand in God. Okay, doesn't that strike you as kind of an interesting phrase? How does this happen? How is Jonathan have this power, this ability to um, strengthen? And the word for strengthen here is the root is chazak, which is a very common word for being strong and strengthening. You'll see here that um, it is in the PL form, which is one of the most intensive forms of the verb usage in the Bible, showing that this was something that was very strongly done. This wasn't a pat on the back and saying, "Hang in there, buddy," or "Chin up, my friend." That there was something happening here that Jonathan's friendship with David was one of more than just you know good drinking buddies or fighting buddies or pals in the field hunting. They weren't just hunting buddies, but something about the relationship with Jonathan had a spiritual connotation to it, had a strengthening that Jonathan had an ability to touch the throne of God in his life, in his ability to interact with David, that David was not just strengthened um, physically, but this friendship had an ability to strengthen him in his creator, in his walk with God. Also noticing here that this is Elohim being used again, not Yahweh. So again, how do we think about this? How was he strengthened? Um, we'll find as we pick up later on in Jonathan's conversation, we're going to see Jonathan didn't have a truthful understanding of what was going to happen. We'll look on that next week. So here he was strengthening David, even though he didn't understand everything perfectly. He did not have a 100% understanding of what God's will was here. He only had a partial understanding. But we do understand here that he had a very positive influence in David's life and helped David find his place in God's will. And maybe that's what the strengthening is not so much that we have the ability to change anything about our circumstances or but we can help understand our place in God's will, and that understanding our place in God's will can bring about a peace, which can be a strength. It can be peace can bring you strength or victory, if you will, over your fears, over your negativity, over your sullenness and maybe depression, knowing that you are where God wants you to be and you are fulfilling um, his plan for your life, uh, what more is there? I mean, that is the place that all of us seek to be, is to know that everything we're doing is for God's plan and God's purpose, and that we are in the middle of his will. I know that's what I strive for because there is no better place to be. And so with that beautiful thought, I'll leave that with you. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful week. And God bless you all, and look forward to chatting with you again next time. All right. Bye-bye.